Hi, I'm Ensign Strider with my thoughts on the Destiny beta, which I believed closed 2 days ago. I have been playing it every single day. It was available to play, even during the time when I wasn't feeling too good, like I was full of flu. I just play a bit of Destiny, just take my mind off things, just so I could really get my teeth into it. Whether I played 15 minutes on a certain day or an hour on a certain day is, irrelevant. I did get enough playtime in here across all the game modes available to really just give you my opinion on what I think about it. So I'm going to go through it as I played the game, so I can elaborate and just talk about some things where I think it could be improved or should be improved. But the first thing you do is you pick your character. You pick your class and then build your character. The classes are varied enough to provide different combat opportunities. Once you've started to level them a bit, you do feel like a sort of sense of ownership. I did play all three classes just to, so I could give you my opinion on them. I've got to say, the original one I created, the Hunter, he did seem a little strange to use in player versus enemy situations until I kind of got the role he was meant to fulfill. He's kind of like the scalpel of the team, of the character classes. Precision strikes, I was loading them up with the sniper rifle and scout rifle, and just using him for precision strikes. The only super which was available during the beta, which is like a big special move which is assigned to both bumpers, or R1 and L1 on the PlayStation pad. I was playing on the PlayStation 4. It's a flaming hand gun sort of thing, hand cannon, which is like a one-hit kill. It's one-hit kill but all but the most powerful of enemies, but it does deal high damage to those as well. It was it was very focused. You hit this guy, you hit this guy, you hit this guy. It's just like, and it took out a small area of groups. So to me, the Hunter seemed very like focused, surgical scalpel, just cut into the enemies. Pick an entry point and cut in there. Your Titan is your big get in there and blunt instrument, just really cause some damage. His super, the one which was available during the beta, reflected this also. Just a big ground pound with a shockwave. Which was strangely satisfying to use. He just jumps in there and just pounds the floor, massive shockwave, and he just seemed to be like he was the guy who just got in there first. Load him up with armor and skills that increases durability, and just throw yourself in there, get into the thick of the fight, so the Hunter can pick them off from the sides. So he seemed to be the one who had to like get in there, draw the most attention to himself, and soak up some damage. A bit tanky. You can build your characters to be anything you want them to be within the restrictions of the skills, but I didn't get to play with that many skills because this beta didn't last for that long. It was just like a sampling, and we didn't really get to have a look at the skill sets. There was an entire character subclass that we did, with a relatable super that we didn't really get to play with, and apparently those skill trees are completely different. I didn't really get to have the chance to have a look at them in depth, but you can build, say, a Hunter who is more armoured, so you can go in there just like the Titan would, with maybe a fully automatic shotgun or something, and wail on your enemies. You can build that. It's possible. When I was looking through the Hunter skill tree, I did see the ones that increased armor, so that's a definite thing. You can also increase the speed of your Titan, say, if you prefer to forgo armor, you can become faster, so maybe that will be more surgical in that play style. The Warlock is kind of like your space wizard. I didn't really like the Warlock as much when I was playing with them, but it did start to grow on me. He seems to be your big damage dealer to groups of weaker enemies. He could just wipe them in an instant. The big Nova Bomb was fun to use. I always got a little thrill when I just jumped into the air, just aimed it, and just like you guys, and just throw a big old space fireball at them, with me shouting Hadouken on more than one occasion as I did so. It's probably a good job that no one seemed to be using the mics in the Destiny beta. That's heads up, guys. Just put your microphones in, even if you've just got the one that came with the PlayStation, the crappy one. That works fine. I was speaking to Scottish. We played this together at one point. Scottish Warrior 92. If you don't follow, if you're not subscribed to him on here, you should go and do so. But we were playing together, and that headset that he was using worked perfectly fine. I've got one that's not all that brilliant. It's it's a weird brand, but that one, it works perfectly well, and it has a lifetime guarantee. So I was like, I'm sold on that. You don't have to spend mega bucks on like Turtle Beaches. You can just get a headset, and it really helps with communication. Especially some of the strikes, which I'll get to in a little while, can take quite a while to get through. So after you've created your character, you've got your character creator, so that's just once you've chose your class, sorry. You've got your character creator, and you can choose between 3 races: human, exo, and a Walken. A Walken kind of like look a bit like Electro from The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and exo are basically robots. They look a bit Terminator-y. So and of course humans, you know what they look like, and you can choose between male and female of either one of these. The character customization options, I've got to admit, felt a bit lacking. It did feel, once I created my guy, like there was maybe that they could have had a bit more. This could be in final release of the game, I don't know, there could be more options in there. But I did feel, once I created my character, that I could run into a guy who looks like me. Character creator is very important. It's a sense of ownership. I mean, they say that, your loots you'll create your guardian with the loot that you want, your weapons, your armor, and that will help you with ownership. But let's face it, when you're creating a game with loot, you're constantly switching out for better gear all the time, so you're not going to feel ownership if you're stripping parts of your armor and weapons away and just throwing them away and just saying, I don't need those anymore, and switching out for better armor. That detracts. It's the character creator is where you really get your sense of ownership from the beginning. So a few more options will be nice. Maybe facial hair for guys, jewelry for girls, or jewelry for guys and facial hair for girls. It's just like, we're open. Why not? Let us do this. Maybe a few more facial markings, and the face paint, that sort of stuff. Just add a few more options, and that'd be great. And beards would also be appreciated, and mustache. I want a mighty mustache on my guy. Another thing that irked me a little when I created my guy is I made him look a bit older, as I generally do. I like to play as like someone who maybe reflects my own age, instead of just like young guy. And then when he spoke, your character does speak very little in the part of the game you play in the beta, but when he spoke, his voice was young, and I was just like, I'm gonna have to go back and create a young guy just to reflect the voice, because that really throws me off. When I created in Dragon Age Origins, I created an older guy. I wanted human noble. I was like, I want him to be an older dude, like, it's just like, the thing is with Dragon Age Origins, your dad, he looked younger than me and was calling me pup all the time. Just like, no, I'm an old honourable knight, dude. I don't want to be pup anymore. So that was just a little thing that irked me. I had to go back and make a younger guy. I still made him like looking a little bit older, like maybe he was, I don't know where I was going with that, but yes, the character creator could use a few more options. From there, you go straight into the opening cutscene, and oh my god, it is beautiful. I rarely say this about like opening cutscenes, but my god, it's beautiful. The whole thing's on Mars, and there's kind of like this, almost like a film grain sort of feel to as you're watching it. I was getting kind of like, it was like old footage, like found footage. Hard to describe that. There's like this effects that have been put over the top of it, like maybe a grainy film effect, and it really did. It was just like when we were viewing it, it looked like found footage. I just appreciate it, and the whole thing was beautiful. And as they come up over the ridge, there's like some astronauts on Mars. When they come up over the ridge, they see the Traveller, which is, I'll just grab that. It's behind the guy there. It's like this big sphere, and it's making it rain on Mars. And the whole story kicks off that the Traveller shared its technology with us. It allowed us to become more powerful, and then it died or is possibly sleeping. There's conflicting sides of this within the bit of story that we have played. Some people believe it just to be sleeping. Some people say it's dead. And it created the ghosts, and the ghost serves as your guide throughout the beta and the whole game when it's finally released. And it's voiced by Peter Dinklage. They have changed the voice acting from alpha to beta, and it does sound better now. It kind of like sounds like he's speaking into a tin can a little, but I liked it. It was perfectly serviceable. They did remove that wizard came from the move line, which I was a bit upset about, but hey, you never know. Just maybe in the final version of the game, they'll put that in as an Easter egg somewhere, or he'll say it, or maybe just in that section of the game, he will say it. So yeah, it's the Traveller. It's like gifted us with this power, like the ability to wield the light. It can bring the dead back to life. All this technology. And it's powerful, but what is it? It came to Earth, seemed to be seeking refuge. I mean, it made it rain on Mars, for Christ's sake. It seemed to be hiding from something. It came to Earth, it gifted us with power, obviously to fight for it, it seems to be. It's unable to defend itself, so it has others do so for it. Is it kind in that respect, or is it really just damned us? It doesn't really explain much about it. It's obviously it's powerful, but what is it? What is the Traveller? Some clarification, would be nice, considering we're in this world and the Traveller is such a big part of it. Someone's got to know. You meet a character called the Speaker during the course of the beta, and he doesn't tell you what it is. It just said it's here and it's hiding from the darkness, which is the enemy of the peace, and it doesn't really explain what that is either, but this is a beta, it's to be expected. The controls for it are very Halo. I'm going to be perfectly honest. The controls for Halo weren't terrible. They were good controls. They kind of like made controls for first-person shooters work on a console, if we're honest. It just felt very natural, and if you've played a Halo game, you'll be able to just pick this up and play it instantly. There's a few subtle differences here and there, but nothing that you're going to be tripping over. It. The game does a good at, it feels natural, and the game does introduce certain things as you're playing, just as you're going along. It doesn't presume you're stupid. It just it flashes up, left trigger aims down your scopes, and you do it, and then it disappears. It's just, it doesn't assume you're stupid. It assumes you know how to move around with the sticks. It's not that level of tutorial, which, let's face it, when you're sometimes have to look around with the sticks in a game, you're just feeling like, God, I've played games before, can you give me a bit of a break here? So, the graphics of this are amazing, and that's even on last generation consoles. I took the time to look them up, and they're amazing regardless of which platform you're picking this up on. It really does look like it's just really pushing the last generation consoles right to the edge. You can see the difference, but between last gen and current generation titles, you can see it, but it's not huge. You won't change your enjoyment out of this. It looks damn beautiful, even if the colour palette could do with a bit of tweaking, but I'll get to that in a moment. So yeah, it's a beautiful game to look at. I will happily say that, with some amazing, absolutely beautiful skyboxes. For moving on from your opening tutorial level, which just guides you through into this, what sort of world we're inhabiting. You're taken to the tower, and the tower is a little confusing. It doesn't really explain some things which should be explained, but this is better. Maybe in full release it will explain things better. It doesn't really explain things like reputation, how you earn reputation. It's a confusing process. You're looking at guns. It's like, well, I need more reputation with you, but how do I earn it? You eventually do pick up oh, I see, I've done this here, I've gained some reputation, I need to do that more, and it does eventually become, you can see how to gain reputation, even though it is a little bit grindy. This does have MMO style elements to it, although Bungie never call it an MMO, they sort of call it a shared world shooter. I maybe should talk about that a little for a moment. Shared world shooter is hard to say, for one, and two, It basically means it's online. You're going to need a Bungie.net account if you want to play this game. I believe it's running through their servers entirely. And you need an account. So it's easy enough to set one up. I've done it. So if I can do it, anyone can do it. Yeah, and essentially as you're playing the game, anyone who's playing the game as well, you can run into them. That's not to say you're all there all at the same time, like a massive server. Just if you are out in the wild exploring, and there's another player in the same area, he could just drop into your game. It's just like, they don't just suddenly appear, they just appear on the horizon, and they're off doing their own things, and it makes the experience of actually going out in the wild and, you know, maybe just salvaging materials or picking up a few side missions here and there. It does make the whole experience that little less lonely, you know, with the reasonably sized areas that you get to wander around in. It does make them feel that little bit less lonely. You're not out there on your own. You can see another hunter off in the distance. There's even little moments of joy where you can be hiding behind a crate in absolute fear from some high level enemies you didn't expect to run in, only to have another guardian run around the corner, gun at the ready, and help you out in your time of need. There's also times where you can spot another player just walking through the area and coming under heavy fire, and you can whip out your sniper rifle, take a few shots, help him out, and as he looks to find out where the shots were coming from, just give him a little wave, because there are remotes in this game. Just give him a little wave before you head off to your destination, the way you were intended. You just decide to stop and help that guy out. There's no player versus player in the open areas either. Just so you know, it will be bad enough, struggling with enemies only to get griefed by some player who's just having a bad day. It is more enjoyable, I think, when you're suddenly saved unexpectedly, or suddenly save another player. You know, that feeling of like teamwork, even though if it's only fleeting for a couple of minutes, just while you help each other out, then exchange pleasantries and you're on your way. I think Bungie should add maybe a proximity voice setting here. They've done it in past games, but like a proximity voice, at least I think they implemented that in Halo. But proximity voices will go a long way, so you can just like speak to them just briefly, just like, hey, do you want to form a fire team or whatever? You can form 3-man parties, and you can even do these on the story missions as well, which is kind of cool. I'll get to that in a minute. But just like, instead of just like sending an invite, which generally gets ignored through the through the system, it's just to exchange like a small greeting, just like, hey, how are you doing? Fancy forming fire team? You hear it come through your headset, no, and away you go. Instead of having to bother with using the pad and just like clicking on the guy with the right stick and invites, because generally they're moving around and you have to be looking dead on them to send them an invite using the pad. But yeah, there are emotes as well, with up being wave or greet, because each different class and gender has each race and gender has its own version of these animations. But there's greet for pressing up, I believe it's right for point, down for sit, and left is dance, the important one. Dance is just amazing for all situations. Impromptu dance parties wherever you go, that's all I'm saying. That's sold Destiny. It made it a little bit more fun, just defeating a giant boss and then dance party time. So Old Russia, the area which you explore and the story takes part in the beta, it's not all that big, if I'm perfectly honest. I was roaming around it and it's large, but it's not huge. I mean, I understand that there's going to be storage capacity on the final box game, but it's not massive. It did feel like you were just going from large open area funneled through some corridors, another large open area. Sorry, it's quite warm and I'm starting to sweat a little. But another large open area. It's just like, that seemed to be the sort of thing it was. Don't get me wrong, being funneled through corridors in a shooter is tried and tested. We've been doing this since the very first shooter back in the day with Wolfenstein 3D. Going through the corridors is tried and tested and it stands true. But it would be nice sometimes to not go through those corridors, because sometimes you're backtracking through areas you've already been through 2, maybe 3 times. So it would be nice maybe for a way to get through them without going through the buildings, go around them, you know, then leave them as story destinations or objective destinations, go around them, head in different directions, you know. But who knows what how it'll happen in the end product, but I think that is going to stay true. Some of the areas are locked off. I'm going to call this because a lot of time it's like people saying, oh well, they're high leveled enemies, you know, question marks above the head, you don't know how powerful they are. I believe the reason why these enemies have question marks above their heads and they're not giving a level for these guys is because you can't hurt them. They're immune to everything you do. It seems that they're just stood there as guardians of this area that they don't want you to look in yet. You know, so it's just like, you can't kill them, you can't harm them. I did a super move on a single enemy just to try and see if the bar moved any. You know, I thought like, you can't be immune to that. No, he was immune to that too. It's just, they do seem to be there just for, you know, we're blocking this off. So Old Russia, the open area where the story takes place for the beta, is kind of brown, as perfectly honest. This is a post-apocalyptic game. There are drips of colour here and there, with such as plant life and you know, there is bits of colour. You know, it's not completely just drab brown. It's like worn rusted metal, and it suits the area for what it is, you know. But it would be nice to have maybe that little bit more colour. What really does make the area pop though is the skybox. It's beautiful and it does add that little bit of colour. You know, the oceans are blue, the sky is blue, there's clouds in the sky, and it does add some much needed colour to the environment of Old Russia. It's just, instead of it all being like brown and rusted metal and, you know, metal sheeting, it adds some very, very much needed colour. The musical score for this as well, which I haven't mentioned, is superb. It's absolutely superb. It really does drive home, you know. It picks up when there's action and it kind of just suits the area you're in, and it helps to tell the story. One thing that doesn't help tell the story is the actual story and narrative itself. It's very dribbled out. You think in the opening section of your game you'd need to tell as much as you can, just like, here's some important stuff, you know, this is what you need to know, here's why what you're doing in the world is important. Instead you're just a guardian, defend. It's just, the story could do with a little bit more for me. It does set up some things, just like the Fallen, who are the main enemy you seem to face more frequently within the beta. They came to this planet and they believe they own it, and they salvage things from, you know, old space yards and cars and technology. Anything they can get hands on they'll take. The Hive, they're space zombies. You know, it's just, they explain the enemy like just like that, just like I'm doing, just like basic stuff. It doesn't really give you any purpose or how things feel in the world. The story does feel lacking. The fact that you can, as you're playing, unlock these grimoire cards, which when you go to Bungie.net you can inspect them and it gives you a little bit of lore. It's just like, I'm not seeing how that works. There should be more story in here, I'm thinking, to understand the world. It's the first game in this series, and it's the opening, like, maybe hour and a half of actual story playtime. You need to establish your world in that time, get people invested. So yeah, the story, it was dribbled out, just little bits in here and there, and I was struggling to get invested in the world that I was in. But I was having fun with the controls, which were very Halo. So the combat was fun to do. I did try co-op, as I said, with Scottish Warrior 92, so thanks to him for helping me out with that, because I wanted to test them. It was stable. I never noticed any of us dropping out or lagging or anything like that. And it was cool and way more fun playing with someone else, just because Scottish's play style to mine is completely different. I'm more of a like get into the action, but kind of hang back, kind of like a gradual slog through the enemies, where he'll go in there with a knife. He doesn't care. He's crazy. So we did test it. There was no like major problems with, you know, like disconnection or errors or things like that. Although eventually just kind of like getting into a party together to begin with, a fire team as they're called within the world of Destiny, there was some difficulty there. We couldn't seem to connect to each other to begin with, but once we connected there were no further problems. I tried multiplayer, which isn't really my thing, but just for the sake of me being able to give you my impressions on it, I played it. It was actually enjoyable. It reminded me of the Halo Reach days, where I did used to play Halo multiplayer frequently with friends, and it was just, it did feel skill based, which Bungie had said numerous times. It's skill based, not, you know, reaction based. My reactions aren't as good as they used to be. I'm getting older, and it's just like, it did seem to be skill based. It was just like, if you can aim your gun and point it at someone's head, you know, you're going to win the fight over the guy who stood opposite you. It's skill. You know, you can go and find a little area where you've got a clean, nice line of sight with a sniper, fire off a few rounds before moving away again. It had a good flow to it, which could sometimes actually be disrupted by trying to find, especially on larger maps, trying to find another Guardian to fight against, a member of the opposing team. The only way to rapidly move around the larger maps was on your Sparrow, which is unarmed, which essentially just gives your opponent free opening shots on you when you're while you have to, you know, disembark from your Sparrow and then take aim. So you really didn't want to be zipping around your Sparrow because you felt like a, you know, a moving target. So yes, the floor could be worked upon within the larger maps. I didn't really notice anything in the smaller maps. I didn't get to play any of the Iron Banner, so I can't comment on that, which was a variation of multiplayer where your equipment matters. In standard multiplayer, everyone's equipment is kept like an even balance, just so everyone has a fair advantage. But in Iron Banner, if you got awesome armor, awesome guns, you can dominate, but it's still a skill involved in it. I did ask someone who took part in it, just says, oh yeah, you can still get kills, you know, even if your equipment isn't up to much, you know, but you still want to try and head in there with something decent at least. Then on the final closing days of the beta, they released the moon. You couldn't go to the moon previously. You could go to the moon for the final couple of hours, I believe, of the beta. With them being able to do this, they changed my mind on the entirety of Destiny. I originally was like, well, maybe I get it, maybe I won't. I'm kind of a bit like that. With being able to go to the moon, I was sold on it. It's the moon. It looks exactly as you expect it to. Let's forget the fact that there's gravity, and you can also hear gunfire clearly because Traveller, it's space magic. The space magic makes these things happen. I hope that doesn't become a cop-out kind of like for along the way for why things that are the way in Destiny. Space magic, just Traveller did it. You know, I hope that isn't a thing just for a cop-out for, you know, gravity. There's gravity on the moon. It's exactly the same as what it is on Earth. There's no floatiness. Traveller did it. So yeah, but it was what you did within this story mission. You're just given find this you know, this Guardian. He's been lost to us, and you head out there. You slog across the surface of the moon. You fight some Fallen which are different to the Fallen on Earth. You know, you head out there. You find him. You find this mysterious temple, and it actually generated some interesting questions that I wanted to know the answer to. And I started to think as well, maybe the Guardians, all of them aren't as squeaky clean as we believed them to be. It had me asking questions, which is good. It's just like, I thought maybe there's a group of Guardians who are doing things differently. They don't work for the Traveller, they're working for themselves, they operated in a different method. It's just, I was starting to get these questions like, why is the world the way it is? Also, there's a temple there with scary space zombies inside it, with the with the Hive in there, which is one of the enemy types. They are essentially space zombies, although a little more alien. Apparently they infest the moon as well. They're like all below the surface of the moon. Apparently during the story we had to give it up. We had to just like, they have to take it, we have to relinquish this foothold to the Hive. We have to protect Earth. To protect Earth, we must relinquish the moons of them. So the moon changed my mind. There was a bit of vehicle combat in there as well, with a vehicle which is actually armed, named a Pike. I had a little play with one of these before, back on Old Russia, and a little during the multiplayer. And the fact that it was in a story mission, it added to it. It made it a little bit more enjoyable. Just being able to just zip around on this fast little vehicle and take the fight to the enemy, and that entire mission changed my mind, and it was fun. It mixed things up in that story mission with like, you defend here, you're attacking here, you've got a little vehicle section here. It reminded me very much of Bungie's original mantra for creating Halo, which was 30 seconds of fun repeated. This isn't possibly the greatest shooter I've ever played, but it is probably going to be the next big thing. I can say that in all honesty. I don't think it's going to be for people who like a deep and interesting in-depth story, because there wasn't really much of that in the beta. It could be that it was just a beta version, but I really would have liked to see some more story. That's where I would be like sold and invested. But I'm going to definitely look into this first installment. I've actually pre-ordered the. Let's just see if I've actually pre-ordered the collector's edition before the beta launched, because I expected big things from it. I'm a big Bungie fan. I love Bungie, and I expected big things from it. And I ordered the collector's edition beforehand, and I'm still going to get the collector's edition when it gets released on the 9th of September, mainly because of the little Peter Dinklage robot you get with it. But that's me. So yeah, I was sold on that last mission, and it's just a bit of a shame that it was only open for 2 hours on the final day. That is one thing Bungie are going to have to watch out for. Things like the Iron Banner were available at midnight UK time. They only ever seem to release North American times. There is the rest of the world, Bungie. Like, if you could give us times, that would be fantastic. Letting us know that these things are happening, instead of giving us the American times. I've never used a time zone converter in my entire life. I used it more during the time of the beta than I care to admit. Just like, okay, so we're getting this at this time, which means I've got to look it up, and what time does that mean for us in the UK? And I was having to look things up with the time zone converter. I've never done that before in my entire life, and I used it in the 2 weeks of beta more than I care to admit. It was terrible, it really was. It was just like, there is Europe, the Middle East, Japan, Australia. There's probably people out there who want to play Destiny, and it's just like we're only giving the North American times. The only time they gave an UK time, and not even European, was when they wanted to stress test stress test the servers, which was something for them really. It wasn't more like, well, hey, this is released at this time. Also, something being released at midnight UK time isn't really a whole lot great. It's okay for those who've got the time, but your old school Bungie fans, they've been going for years now. It's just like they'll have families, and midnight isn't really a great time. They really need to try and it's open at midnight and only for 2 hours. They should try and figure out a way just to accommodate everyone. Who wants to play in these events. It did seem a bit lacking when it came to the rest of the world. It was like, North America, here's your time. We're not telling you what time it's taking part in the rest of the world. Even when the moon opened, it was at 10 p.m, which was fine for me. I could jump in it and have a little go. I did have work that night, so it was just like I played it for a little while. It was like I had to go to work. But I was hearing people in the forums just saying like, I didn't really get a chance to have a go at it. Where I work, I'm in the UK, and 10 p.m. isn't a great time for me. That's getting late. That's time for me to think about heading to bed. So it's just, I know that these events are going to run longer in the main game, but just something that would be nice, just like, we're going to drop this in the afternoon in UK time. you know, so it's like UK will be ready for it, you know, it's afternoon, you know, just for those guys, you know, it's just like America will have to wait until they get back from work or whatever, or we're launching this in Australia time in afternoon, you know, just like they're going to get it, and everyone else just like whenever you're ready. You know, think about your global audience, not just North America, because that was beginning to irk a little by the end of the beta. But other than that, I'm sold on it. I thought it was very enjoyable, and I'm definitely going to be picking it up and playing it. I'll possibly even stream some at some point. I did stream some informational stuff on the Destiny beta, just like what's the character creator like, what the vendors in the towers are like, and what they sell, that sort of thing. But I'll probably stream some Destiny as well when the game launches. So that's my final thoughts on it. Just enjoyable, but there are some aspects that need addressing. And Bungie have been addressing some things in the forums. I've been looking, it's just like the Interceptor in multiplayer, way too powerful. We're actually going to cut it down a little bit because we realised that thing was just an unstoppable juggernaut, according to playtests. So it's just like, they are taking the ones that are just like, oh, I hate this because I die to it all the time. They're disregarding those, and it's like the Interceptor. It's like, yeah, we realise now it's a bit of a beast. It's like a tank thing in multiplayer, but it's neither here nor there. So that's been my thoughts on Destiny Beta. Feel free, if you played it or the Alpha even, to leave thoughts down below. I'll be glad to hear read all of them. If you disagree with me on things as well, that's completely fine. You know, I'll engage you in conversation in the comments, I always do. So I've been Ensign Strider, and I should go.